Well, here we are, dashing into Christmas with New Year's right behind it, and often comes with that the pressure to have everything figured out in your business and be ready for January 1st. We've talked about this on the podcast before. You are not behind, and if you don't have it all figured out by January 1st, it's okay. And it's okay to plan your business at your own pace. And one of the things that comes up a lot of times this time of year is picking a word of the year. And I did a few episodes earlier in the podcast about picking a word of the year and what to do with it. I'll link to those in the show notes below. Oftentimes, we end up picking a word, or a word sometimes picks us that we're not quite sure why and why we would want to pick it. That's happened to me recently in the past couple years, and especially this year. I ended up with a word that I'm not quite sure what to do with in some respects. And in some respects, it's prompting some big changes for me in the coming year. So I wanted to share with you a few reasons why you should lean into your word of the year, no matter what it is, and no matter how you might be struggling with why this word. Hello there, and welcome to the Sela Entrepreneur Podcast, where we take a look at doing online business a little differently for women over 50. The goal of each episode that you listen to here is to help women just like you find the clarity needed to confidently redesign their business so it aligns with their values and their purpose, and with the goal of feeling a lot less stressed in the process. So if you're curious about how to do this and how you can choose a word of the year that's meaningful and lean into it and use it in your business, join me in today's conversation. There are years, and this year included, that my final word of the year is something I'm just looking at and I feel a little stumped by. Like, what in the world? Where did this word come from? I've had other years where I fought it and fought it and fought it, and I thought, this is not my word, but finally just gave in and said, yep, that's my word, because this is something I need to learn. This is something that's coming up. It's a repeating pattern. It's words that I find myself using, or words that I hear being spoken around me. And I don't take that lightly. I don't take that as something that I should ignore. And that's what's been coming up with this word. And as I look back, it's a word I've been using since probably about mid-year. And I just didn't realize how important that word was at the time. And it's growing import here through the end of the year. That's already prompting changes and new ideas for how my business will be in 2025. So I will tell you, my word of the year is gentle. And I love the word. I love my idealized version of what that word means. But when you start looking up the definition, it's talking about docile, soft, sometimes weak. And I'm going, that's not what I'm talking about here. When I think of the word gentle, I think of somebody who has a gentle personality. They are somebody who's gone through something and they've come out the other side. They have a more empathetic, more compassionate viewpoint. They're not so rushed. They're not so stressed. And they are somebody who really takes care of other people. And they just have a different attitude about life in general. Or if you think of a gentle giant, somebody who's really a really big person that you've met that's really tall, and they could really easily shake your hand and crunch your hand, but they know their strength. They're aware of it and are careful on how they meet people and how they interact with people. If you look at a lot of horses or big dogs, a lot of times they're referred to as gentle giants, and they're just really cool animals to hang around. That's more of what I'm thinking about in the word gentle as it applies to my business. Now, I'm sharing this because oftentimes, again, we don't pick a word that is all butterflies and rainbows. There are sometimes that our words are difficult. They're difficult, that we need to learn about them and how to apply them into our life and our business. When I look at this word gentle and I look back over just this year, I realize I've been using it since earlier this year. I started calling myself a gentle business coach. And then I started calling my approach to coaching as gentle business coaching. I have an episode about, is gentle business coaching for you? And I'm realizing there's a reason for that. It was teaching me some things. There are some things that I was learning along my entrepreneurial journey that were teaching me that gentle for me is the way to go. And when I was talking with several of my members in the mastermind, that the word gentle came up a lot. The gentle approach, the gentleness that we've created, the gentle atmosphere we've created in that community. I thought I was going in a different direction. I really had two other words picked out that all of a sudden, nope, this word popped in and has not let me go. And again, I don't take that lightly. That's not something I can ignore. I do think as a woman of faith that there are times when I get promptings that this is something I need to pay attention to, and I've taken that seriously. And so I feel like the Lord has been guiding me towards this word. And it has started to spark some big ideas for the new year. Some I will be sharing in future episodes, and one I'm going to be sharing right here is that this podcast, it's time for it to grow, and it's time for it to evolve. It's time for it to take its next step. Over the past 80 episodes, today's episode 81, I have learned so much about myself, about my business. I have found my voice. You've joined me on a journey of discovery that I'm so grateful that you've come along for the ride. But I chose the name, the Sela Entrepreneur, kind of out of desperation. One, it fit my brand and it worked, but I couldn't think of anything else to call the podcast, which is not a great way to pick a podcast title, but it served its purpose. It got me launched. It got me out there. It got me using my voice, and it did its job. And now it's run its course, and now it's time to create a different title for the podcast. One that when you land on it, you have a better idea of what it's about. You have a better idea of what we're talking about, and have a better idea of what's included in the content of the podcast. And so when I look at that, and then I look at the current title, it doesn't do that for you. It doesn't do that for me. And I kind of feel hemmed in a little bit by the title. So the new podcast that you'll be seeing coming up soon is called Doing Business Gently. That word gentle came in, and I thought, okay, so this is a reason I need to pay attention to this word gentle, because there is a theme, there is a direction to take. There is some clarity I've gained over this year about my approach to coaching, about how I want to run my business. And gentle is definitely a word that I've used quite a bit, and so have my clients. Another thing that's influencing this is that there's changing health in my mother's care, in her needs, and it's becoming more of a demand on my physical and mental health. And I need a gentle approach to business and the podcast so that I can reserve the time and energy for her that she needs and that I really want to be able to give her. So these are just different ways that choosing a word of the year impacts your life and impacts your business. If you've been in business for a while, you understand how when you're working from home, there's oftentimes the lines between life and business blur. And a lot of times we need to think about business life and how do those two worlds interact? How do they overlap? And a lot of times what we learn in life, we can apply to our business. And a lot of times what we're learning in our business, we can apply to our life. So when we are looking at the new year and how do we want the new year to go? How do we want to do business in the new year? How do we want to interact with our clients? How do we want to feel at the end of the year about what we accomplished and the goals we set? Gentle, for me, is one of those words. I'm excited to see where this year's word takes me in the coming months. Where does gentle take me? Where do I learn how to apply it more to my life? How do I learn how to apply gentleness in how I do business? And so that's what leaning into your word of the year is all about. And if you need help picking your word of the year, if you're hearing this and you're going, I wish I had a word of the year and I don't know where to start, I have a guide for you. I've never really put one together before because I've never had a process, but this year I felt I needed one. And so I did get some help, and I put together a 15-minute word of the year clarity guide, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. So if you are looking for help on how to have a word of the year or a theme for the year, you can download that at selastudios.co/word of the year. And then if you would like some help taking that word and using it throughout the year, at the end of that guide, there's a list of resources. There'll be links to the podcast episodes that I've talked about word of the year, and also a series of blog posts that I've written over the years about using a word of the year, of how to lean into it throughout the year, how to learn from it, how to use it and apply it into your life and business. When you are looking at your word of the year, when you're looking at planning for the new year, and you're wondering, what do you do? Do you set resolutions? Do you set goals? For me personally, I do believe it starts with the word of the year. It doesn't for everybody, and if it's not for you, don't worry about it. Take what you need and leave the rest. But for me, it starts with the word of the year. That becomes a theme. It kind of becomes a focal point. It becomes a filter in many ways on how I approach business. Am I doing things gently, or am I overdoing it? Am I overtaxing myself? Am I approaching how I serve clients gently, or am I making things so confusing that it's not easy for them or to understand what I do, or how they can spend some time in my world or work with me? Am I showing them how to be gentle to themselves in their business? Or am I throwing so much information at them that working with me and being in my world no longer feels like a safe place to land? So when you look at your word, when you look at the meaning of it, when you look at the definition of it, you look at how you interpret the word and how you want to apply it, that gives you a starting point on how you can lean into that word and follow it into the next year. You can pray over it. You can use it. You can journal about it. You can, I call it artify your word. You can go into Canva and create a really cool template that shows your word of the year, and you have it visibly displayed so that you are reminded of that filter and what you are working on, what your theme is for the year. Gentle for me is also reminding me that I need to set better self expectations. I have not done a good job on that in seasons of this year because my mom's health has changed. It's because my business has changed. I've changed. I've grown. And a lot of times I'm so excited about the growth that I just push through to try to get stuff done. But then I don't really have the energy for my mom, or my mom has a tough season and I need to be more with her and be working with her care team, and I don't have enough left over for the business or as much as I would like. And so again, how are you going to use that word of the year? Right there. It's going to show you how you want to manage and how you want to navigate those changes and those seasons of life that move and grow, whether you're ready for them or not. There's a lot of things that a word of the year can do for you. And I highly recommend you at least consider the idea or grab the 15-minute word of the year clarity guide so that you can just explore the idea of having your own word of the year, and maybe consider how it could set up your new year, how it could help you look at your year differently. And that's what a word of the year has always done for me. But again, if a word of the year is not essential, not everybody uses them, and that is totally fine. And if you choose a word of the year, maybe within a few months, it's served its purpose. It's done what it's needed to do to help you get ready for planning in the new year. Or it's taken you on a journey that you've learned everything that you need to learn. And then guess what? It's okay to leave it or pick a new word, pick a new theme that you want to work with for a few months or for the remainder of the year. It is a tool. It is doing your business gently. It is approaching your business and goal setting and planning from a different perspective. And a lot of times your word will influence those plans. It is a personal journey. It is a flexible experiment. It is something that you can test the waters and see if this is something that you want to pursue further. I've been choosing a word of the year now since about 2015. And I know for me, the years that I don't pick a word, that year is different. I'm not as focused. I'm not as deliberate and intentional in my decision making. And the year just feels a little bit different. And those years I kind of regret not picking a word of the year, or picking a word of the year and then never using it. I've done that a few times over the years as well. So, do you need a word of the year? No, you really don't. But I suggest you at least consider the idea and download the clarity guide and help you figure out, is that something you want to add to your repertoire this year, and see how it could impact and influence your business in 2025. As we close up here, I just wanted to share with you again a big thank you for hanging out with me as the Sela Entrepreneur podcast. It has been an unexpected delight over the last year and a half of discovering I love audio. I love the podcast. I love podcasting. I love learning from other podcasters. And so thank you for coming on this journey with me. This is the last episode of the Sela Entrepreneur podcast. I'm going to take a little bit of a break as I record new episodes as I finish off some of the refresh and rebranding of the podcast, and I expect to be back in early to mid-January. And one of the things I'm using my word gentle for is that I'm using this time and a break from the podcast to get ahead so that when we're ready to launch the podcast as under Doing Business Gently, it'll be from a much gentler perspective, and it's not going to feel so hectic and stressful some weeks as I'm trying to get everything ready to launch and publish the podcast. Thank you for joining me. I hope you will stick around. I hope you'll enjoy the break and come back and join me in the new year under the name Doing Business Gently. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming along this journey with me. And let's keep moving forward. And we're going to do this under the new name, Doing Business Gently, of creating a business simply and sustainably and gently so that you can steward your gifts, your calling, and your business well.